Welcome to Saul FRAZER's BizzChat. I am the founder and CEO of Global Properties Gambia Limited, a company that was formed 17 years ago and operating not only in Gambia but Ghana and Senegal. We're in the business of property development, property management, rentals, site and services, basically covering the whole spectrum of real estate as a whole. And I am here today to introduce to you the BizzChat podcast. And the whole essence of this podcast is to take you through my journey over the last 17 years, looking at the opportunities, the challenges, the obstacles that I had to overcome to turn over a $1,500 business to a multi-billion-dollar business over the last decade and a half. The journey obviously didn't start easy, as you can imagine. Recently, I saw a video on social media when this guy Mane, who's tasked to clear the streets now and clearing all the street vendors. And one particular image or video caught my attention. It was this lady who was selling ice blocks. I think on the streets he has a pan with ice blocks that he was trying to sell. And that reminded me of how my journey also started. I was raised by a single mother who was struggling at that time. She was working in the hotel and also as a part-time business. She was doing some small businesses trying to raise funds. And as the only son, I had to step in and help her sell these products or food that she was trying to get in the market. My mom used to make fish cakes, which I will put on a plate and go out and sell in the streets. She would also put some ice blocks in the freezers so that when frozen, I can go out and sell as well. So seeing those images and seeing how that lady's products were tampered with or thrown away, it just reminded me of how lucky I am today looking at it 17 years ago. As a child, or should I say as many parents back then, they wanted their kids to have education that would help them become someone in society. And during that time, if you were not a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, you wouldn't be considered as successful, as opposed to today, where you have TikTokers, you have bloggers, you have all sorts of career paths that can enrich you. So I would say that today's generation or people that are in today's world are actually very lucky to be having all these options to enrich themselves. Yet so many of, I would say them, choose a different path and not doing anything about it at all. And sometimes a bit frustrating if I'm going to be honest, because you see people are not taking advantages of what is presented to them. They're not trying to educate themselves. They're not trying to make use of everything that is available to them at this present moment to just have a better life and live a better life. So as opposed to going for the law degree or the engineering degree or to become a doctor, I chose a path to study international business. My mother, obviously, who was working in the hotels here in Gambia, happened to find herself in Sweden. When she relocated there, she decided that my sister and I should join her. And that also became a life-changing opportunity for us, because the moment I arrived there, I saw so many opportunities, and it was just a no-brainer for me to say, hey, you know what? I have to make use of this opportunity presented to me. So I chose the path of international business. I went to college there, had good grades. After graduating, I also went for another sort of business or international field And I decided to study international sales and marketing, or international business per se. I moved from Sweden to England, joined a university called Regent's Business School. It was a private business school. And one of the reasons why I wanted the international business in England was to get international exposure. During that time, I believe that Sweden was predominantly exclusive, because you only speak the Scandinavian languages within Scandinavia, which is Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. But having to be in England to improve my English language and also have the international arena just sounded too good to resist. So international business, which I did, majored in marketing, was also another gem of a choice. If I'm gonna say that, the school was exclusive, very exclusive. Some of my classmates were Amidou Babangida, was the son of President Babangida then. I think I had the son of the Italian Prime Minister as well as one of my classmates. And some very rich and fortunate kids who would study from Monday to Thursday and jet off to Paris in the weekend to party, and then just to come back again on Sunday. So I was the one who was always in class taking notes and making sure that I passed my exams. But then I also became a default friend of all of them, because they will call me for notes and want to know a few things. And that during that period, they also introduced me to exclusive restaurants in London, because obviously they say, "Hey, Saul, let's have a chat about what happened in class." Then they will obviously invite me to these restaurants with fancy food, and yeah, I really enjoyed that time. Fast forward, graduated from international business. I then had another opportunity to join a company called ASLIB on a graduate trainee scheme. So basically, the way it works is that they pick some of the best students and fast track them into management. I was selected for this company called the Association for Information Management. And upon successfully going through the fast tracking, I was offered a managerial role where I was exclusively selling to corporate bodies. And some of the businesses I was managing, or some of the accounts I was managing, were the likes of Pfizer, BBC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and even some major international news agencies like CNN and the likes. As I was going through the experience of managing all these big accounts, I couldn't help, reflecting back on how the job opportunities I had back in Sweden, one of which was working in an industrial environment where you keep doing the same thing over and over again, 7 to 8 hours a day. And that nearly killed me. It was just an extra layer of motivation to know that this is not what I wanted out of my life. But then during the time I was studying in Sweden as well, I had the opportunity to do some, maybe it was a job or entrepreneurial exercises, I would say, because one of the things I'm good at is seeing opportunities and making good use of it. For example, in Sweden, in the town that I lived, it was predominantly just European clubs, playing techno, white music and things like that. But then there were a lot of foreigners in that area who, didn't have the option to go to anywhere else other than these places. So I saw a gap and say, hey, why can't we create a club that would play reggae music, soul, R&B? But then most of the clubs were taking them. But there was this amazing, beautiful place called the Concert House. It's nice, it's white and elegant, where these white folks would have their balls or their big parties. But this was within the path of my way. Every day I passed through there to go to school and then from school back home. One day it just struck me and say, why can't I just enter this place and speak to them and see whether we could strike a deal? Because the whole idea was, yes, for most of the time this place was shut because it will open maybe once every month or once every other month. Then I went and I saw the manager. Imagine, a young blank kid with dreadlocks. I had dreadlocks back in the days, walk in there and then knock the door and I say, hey, can I see the manager? And then they say, well, okay, come in. I say, look, I have a business proposal for you. They say, okay, what is it that you have in mind? I say, well, I realized that most of the weekends this place is shut down. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to sell your drinks during those times. And then we use the venue to play our music and stuff like that. We'll bring the crowd. We take the entrance fee. But then anything you sold in terms of drinks, you keep those. He looked at me for a while and said, well, that's actually not a bad idea. But we will require you to put a deposit down in case of damages or security, or whatever. I said, well, the crowd that I'm going to be bringing are a very peaceful crowd. And if I had the deposit to put down, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I'll probably go somewhere else. But right now, all I have is I can guarantee you to bring the crowd forward. He looked at me again and said, okay, you know what? Let's give it a chance and see. Let's give it a try. Before you know it, put flyers together. I remember calling one of my friends who was living in Gothenburg. His name was Lamin. And I said, hey, Lamin, you know what? There's this opportunity to come and play some R&B music, some reggae music in here. And, we'll just give it a try and see. And Lamin was like, okay, how much are you going to pay me? Well, I said, this is a new venture. I'm not sure what sort of revenue we're going to have. So what I can do is we can do some sort of like a revenue sharing. Whatever we make on the gate, you take 20% and we take the 80%. He was like, okay, you know what? As long as you pay my train ticket, then I'll come over. I'm saying, game, it's fine. So we put together a flyer. And then I remember putting something like DJ Lamin from London, because saying DJ Lamin from Gothenburg wasn't going to kill it. It's like DJ Lamin from London, So he came down. We had an amazing party and it was a success. There were no issues in terms of security. There were no issues in terms of breaking glasses or anything like that. So the venue owner became very happy because he sold a lot of drinks that night. I became very happy because we got a lot of entrance through the gates. I was able to pay Lamin and made a quite bit of money for myself as well. So all this was done with zero investments whatsoever. So that just answers the question again that, do you really need money to start a business? Not all the time. So you can sometimes start with little or nothing at all. But this is just one of the business ventures that has given me the experience or sort of the motivation to take it a bit further. Because I remember when I also moved to England, there was also another opportunity that I saw. Freshly coming from Sweden, England for me, London was big. It was massive. Population-wise, the Gambian community was from different places. You have some people in the east and the north and west and whatnot. But guess what? There was no common place where you can find information about what is happening within our community. So the only way that you will get to know where the parties are, where we're going to play football today and all these things is if you become part of this community by knowing somebody. So what if you came and you know no one from the community, but you still wanted to know what was happening? But during that time, Facebook wasn't what it is today. Snapchat and all these things were not what is today. So I said, we need to create a platform where we can share exclusively Gambian news. So I actually set up a website and went around through the communities introducing this website. So in this particular website, I was actually playing a role of a journalist. I was going around interviewing artists, interviewing people. Any success stories to do with Gambians, both in the UK and outside the UK, I would publish and put in this website. to enable people to get more traffic into the website and also get people to know about what was happening within the community. Before you know it, it became a place where even if you have a naming ceremony, you will send me an information to put on the website. If your kid was graduating, the same thing. If there was a mosque opening or a football game was taking place, or these artists were coming to play in town, it would be a place to go. It went to the point where the likes of Trust Bank became my sponsors. They bought some banners and paid for years. JFIN Money Transfer was also one of the customers that was giving business during that time. But I wasn't making it for the money. I wasn't doing it for the money, but it was just something to do to create a communal ground for everyone else. But this was also some sort of like a business, because if I pushed a little bit more on it and push a little bit more on the advertising, I could have gotten advertising revenue, not only to sustain the business, but also to fund other kind of investments that could have been done. So the entrepreneurial skills or trade wasn't something that was started with just Global Properties. It started way before. And, there's been a trend where I've tried and tested so many other things. Obviously, I've just mentioned about the success stories now, but as the podcast go through its lifetime, you're going to realize that I'm also going to share some less successful stories and the reason why I believe they were not successful. So in the UK, I was living the dream. I had a great job. I was able to buy my first house and had everything going well for me. But the desire to come back home was just too strong to resist. I was saving up money, sent to a relative to buy property for me. And I lost those funds, basically. There was no property for me, and there was no funds available to collect. That disappointment, that anger, fueled something in me to think of, why can't someone go through a company instead of through an individual to buy real estate in the Gambia, for example? This was so vital in the formation of Global Properties. But there were other factors that also made Global Properties possible today. Whilst in the UK, I worked hard and I wanted more. I wanted more than what the company was offering. The desire to come back home was too strong to resist, because not only did I lose my money at some point to try to buy a first property, but I was also able to build another house, which was ready. And I just wanted to come home. Coming back home, I reconnected with JFIN Money Transfer. The person who was running it then was Draman, because obviously they bought an advertising space on the website that I was running called the UK Gambian. So we built a relationship through that. At one point, we were just having a conversation online, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come home? We'll offer you a job." And I thought he was joking, so I didn't take it seriously then. But then he repeated it again. And right there and then he did an interview online, and he offered me a 20K job to work for JFIN Money Transfer. But for some reason, I said to him that, okay, I will consider it, but first I want to come to the Gambia to see how the setup is and what you guys are up to. So I came back for that interview, but being the businessman that I was, I decided to also look for other opportunities. I remember sending my CV to Reliance Bank, to Standard Chartered Bank, and also to Comium. The interview at Standard Chartered wasn't the best at all. I don't know what happened, but I never got an offer from them. But Reliance made me an offer. Comium also made me a verbal offer, but it wasn't written. I also put in an application at Access Bank, and Access Bank also made me an offer. They gave me a corporate sort of managerial post. So out of all these 4 offers that I had, I unfortunately turned down JFID. I also turned down Reliance, and I opted to go for Access Bank. Because imagine you haven't been in the country for more than 2 decades. You needed to be in an institution where you can get a quick education of what was what, who is who, what business was thriving, and whatnot. And I felt that at Access Bank, I could do that, because when businessmen and women come for financing, they bring all the information available to your disposal so that you can make a good write-up for their request. So that gives you quick education, but then it also gives you the opportunity to know what business was thriving and what business wasn't. So I ended up working for Access Bank. It only took me 6 months, because during that 6 months, I also moved into my new house, getting things done, going back and forth. I needed to get my water system running in my new house, because it was in Sunchu. During that time, there was no water and there was no electricity. The electricity wasn't an issue, obviously, because we were using solar and inverter. But for the water, we couldn't connect to Nawek then, so we had to rely on borehole. I remember being told that on the opposite side of the road, there's an Indian company doing borehole drilling, that I should reach out to them, which I did. I reached out, and this gentleman came over, and I remember him looking at me and looking at the tall house that I built. It was a 2-story building with 5 bedrooms, massive. I think he looked at me twice and looked at the house again, looked at for the 3rd time again, and he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm just moving back here from the UK." And he was, "Oh, okay, what were you doing there?" I said, "Well, I'm a salesman by profession." And he was like, "Oh, interesting. So it's a nice house. Not where did you get the money from?" But I think he was just trying to do research about how I was able to afford to build such a house. Then when it was time for me to ask questions, I asked, why did you leave India to come to Gambia? And he started saying, "Well, we're here, we're doing road construction, we're doing this and we're doing that. And we're about to build 200 homes on the other side of the road." And I was like, "Oh, interesting." And I just asked him, "What is the plan, with these 200 homes? How are you going to sell it?" I said, "Well, we don't know. We just want to build and sell." I say, "Okay, then why don't we do something like this? You guys focus on building these houses, and then you give me the opportunity to sell and promote these properties for you." He looked at me again and smiled and said, "Are you sure you can sell?" I said, "Well, it's what I've been doing in England, so I don't see any reason why I can't do it here either." Then he said, "Well, I cannot make that decision. I have to wait for my MD to come. He's coming next week, but I can set up an appointment for you." And I said, "Why not? Why not? Yeah, let's do that." And I remember walking away from that conversation thinking, what if, this is an opportunity. This is a company that will come with 100% investment, and all I need to do is put together a sales and marketing team to be able to sell and promote these properties. Then I think the following day he called and said, "Okay, my boss said he's willing to see you once he come back next week." I put up a small presentation and waited for the appointment to come. The boss came from India, and I went to see him again. He measured me again, looking at me from top to bottom. I'm sure there were lots of questions in his head. And the same question came up again. "Are you sure you can sell these houses for us?" I said, "Well, yes, I am, but only on one condition, that I have it on an exclusivity basis. If I'm going to sell for you, I wouldn't want anyone else to be able to sell these units. He smiled and said, yeah, you're asking for too much without proving yourself. I said, well, I'm willing to work with you on the basis that you give me a number that I need to sell for the first 3 months. If I achieve those numbers, the exclusivity becomes mine. If I don't, then you are at liberty to appoint any other person or work with another person. And he said, well, okay, that's fair enough. We would want you to sell 10 properties within the first 3 months. I say, okay, no problem. I walked out of there confidently, knowing that this is an opportunity I couldn't resist. Sell 10 units and you have exclusivity for 200. Whether you sell or not, the money still comes to you. Luckily for me, the trade fair was just being launched at the Independence Stadium. I booked a stall and started doing my promotional materials, printed flyers, brochures, and whatnot. Obviously, the company has just started. It was me, another employee. We were like 4 or 5 employees at max, I think. And at that trade fair, I think we sold about 12 units, and the exclusivity became ours. And that also basically just propelled the establishment of Global Properties. But like I said, this was obviously one of the major factors. But then as I came back home as well, during the first 6 months before getting into the establishment of the business, I realized that there was a huge gap in the property market in the Gambia. People would only start thinking about buying homes or buying properties when they're about to retire. Because all of a sudden you're thinking that, okay, the rent, the salary or the pension that I'm making won't be enough to pay for this rent. So what am I going to do now? And I remember thinking that it was fundamentally wrong to start planning one of your biggest investments in your lifetime at the age of 40 or 45 or beyond. I personally think that this is something that you should do, start thinking and planning about when you're about 20, 25, maybe once you get your first job. So the idea of targeting the younger generation or the middle class also came into bat during that time. So like I said, it's a combination of different factors that has led to what Global Properties has become today. And I'm happy to say that all these factors has come into very handy ways to enable me to structure strategic plans in forming one of the leading real estate countries in the Gambia. This is BizzChat, and I am Saul FRAZER. The target to secure the exclusivity was just 10 units, but at the trade fair, we sold 12. And you wouldn't guess who actually bought 10 out of those 12 properties at the trade fair.